West End Girls by the Pet Shop Boys was recently named the UK's best ever number one by The Guardian. This is obviously highly debatable, but we won't go into that now because that's a different podcast. What is certainly undeniable is the impact the song had then and the amazingly long and successful career of the Pet Shop Boys since 1984 when it came out. The charts at the time were dominated by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran and Culture Club, and the hit factory of Stock, Aitken and Waterman was just beginning. Pop music felt important, and Neil Tennant, one half of the Pet Shop Boys, knew that as well as anyone, since he was at the time assistant editor at the mighty Smash Hits, probably the best music magazine ever, which is another different podcast. 2 books have recently been republished about life on the road with the Pet Shop Boys, and Lynsey Hanley has written us a lovely, heartfelt piece about them. Lynsey, many thanks for joining us.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for asking me.
But can I ask first, though I think I know the answer to this, are you a Pet Shop Boys fan?
I've been a Pet Shop Boys fan since West End Girls got to number 1, 34 years, since the age of 9, so they're just completely formative. It's like they're in my DNA.
Do you remember the first time that you heard them? Do you remember having a sense that this was something really important?
Well, the funny thing is, I think I remember seeing them on a not very good children's pop quiz. It was Mike Reed's Pop Around on BBC One. I realised that they were really, really different. They weren't jumping around on stage. They weren't smiling. Neil Tennant certainly wore suits. He wore glasses. And I was kind of like, pop stars wearing glasses? I've never seen pop stars wearing glasses before. It was only when West End Girls got to number 1, and it's got that extraordinarily atmospheric introduction. It's incredibly sophisticated, and it just sounded absolutely nothing like anything that had come before or since, really.
I was going to start with West End Girls, actually, because I was thinking about the opening lines, which for a pop song, they're quite something. Sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun in your hand pointing at your head. It's quite downbeat. And we were going to just listen to a little bit here to remind ourselves.
Having a chair bop there, aren't we?
Yes. Yes. Lynsey, I was going to say, do you think that the building blocks of Pet Shop Boys songs are all there in that first one?
I think so, yeah. I think it's the combination of the very sort of short story-esque lyrics, the very, very straightforward delivery, the incredible air of, as I said, sophistication. I think that complete sort of metropolitan glamour that I think only they, coming from outside London and having moved to London precisely because it seemed incredibly glamorous and yet quite skanky at the same time, frankly. But that sense of glamour and kind of misery colliding, I think that's definitely at the heart of all Pet Shop Boys, all the best Pet Shop Boys songs, to be honest.
Delicate and beautiful synth and then some spontaneous trumpeting.
Exactly. You know, it's very, very hard to think of an act that's remotely like them, really, and I think that's got a lot to do with the particular circumstances that they met in. It was kind of in the post-punk era, really. You know, they met on the King's Road, Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe. They both had an interest in David Bowie. They both had an interest in punk. You know, and King's Road was the sort of the heart of where punk started, or one of the hearts, because of where Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood had their shop, where the Sex Pistols met and so on. And, you know, I think it was that sort of fusion of punk and dance and disco, all those things combining, added to the fact that Neil Tennant's from Newcastle and Chris Lowe's from Blackpool. They kept those connections with the North and were always aware during the Thatcher period what was happening in the North and felt very connected to it. Gave an absolute political edge and a political anger that their music might not have had otherwise.
And there was that constant kind of refusal to pretend that everything is great, and that's, you know, the Smiths did it as well. I know that's a comparison that's been made before, the Smiths and the Pet Shop Boys. That thing of setting yourself against the pop music machine that Lucy described in her intro.
Exactly. I mean, in Chris Heath's book, Literally, that is an account of their first tour of the Far East and of Britain in 1989, Chris Heath gets into this quite sort of drunken conversation with Neil Tennant. And Neil just goes off on this absolute rant about Stock Aitken and Waterman, who were the sort of Stakhanovite pop producers of the time, you know, making records for Kylie and Jason and Sonia and Sunita and goodness knows who else. And Neil Tennant just starts saying their records are totally and utterly Thatcherite records, and Stock Aitken and Waterman are totally and utterly Thatcherite, and I hate it all, but they are perfect pop records because they're representative of their time. What was really perfect about Encapsulation, it was almost envy, really.
Yes, the lyrics are a million miles away because, as you say, the lyrics, the Pet Shop Boys songs are about things and they're very subtle and elusive. And in fact, their lyrics were published as one of those standalone books, which we had a brilliant review in the paper of those as well, and they stand up very well. And the Stock Aitken Waterman lyrics are all "I love you, baby, you love me, why don't you love me?" But actually, I was listening to a bit. The instrumentation.
You can't imagine Faber publishing those.
But the instrumentation's not that different because it's like dance music. It's at the beginning, it's like high energy, it's dance music, it's almost disco. But they're doing such madly different things. Yeah. You say in your piece that the Pet Shop Boys didn't look cheery if they didn't feel cheery. They refused to pretend that everything was fine and be glossy. If they saw a problem, they wanted to talk about the problem. They did everything on their own terms.
Yeah. And there's a paradox to this whole thing, though. I mean, the less they played the game, the more they seemed to win. You described their first appearance on Top of the Pops, which seems to sort of demonstrate that quite perfectly.
Yeah, I think it was just the sheerness, you know, a real unwillingness to compromise. And I think people, they might have found it irritating. They might have found it really refreshing, but they certainly didn't forget it. Water cooler chat, you know, circa 1986 would have been, oh my God, did you see those two miserable guys on Top of the Pops last night standing still and not laughing or not smiling when they sang? The cliche quote was always, the Pet Shop Boys are the Smiths you can dance to.
And they lasted longer than the Smiths as well. And they also, when they wrote about things, they wrote about real issues. I was thinking about It's a Sin. Mm-hmm. There was an issue. We're going to hear a little bit of It's a Sin for a little treat as well. And then maybe you could tell us what happened with that in Hong Kong.
The video just before we came on in heavy research. So it was directed by Derek Jarman.
That's right.
And it's completely mad. I mean, it's not completely mad. It's very Derek Jarman, but all these cloaked figures persecuting the Pet Shop Boys. There's a scene where someone appears to be eating whipped cream and banana and possibly cabbage.
Yeah.
It's completely mad. And this is 2 years before Like a Prayer by Madonna created such a sensation. There was 2 years of controversy before that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they basically commissioned Derek Jarman to distill one of his films into the length of one of their songs. So it was a Derek Jarman film, sort of distilled into 3 or 4 minutes.
Remind us what happened in Hong Kong with the censorship.
The Pet Shop Boys were so happy with what Derek Jarman had done for their It's a Sin video, you know, the gluttony, you know, the personification of all the sins and so on, that they commissioned Derek Jarman to make a load of Super 8 films to be projected behind them during shows in the Far East. You know, they paid him tens of thousands of pounds and he made these Super 8 videos. And for It's a Sin, he basically made quite a similar version to the video, but he took it one step further. And for It's a Sin, in the live show, it was footage of 2 sort of glistening chested boys rubbing oil over each other and kissing. It's one of those things where, you know, you wouldn't think twice. You wouldn't think twice, no. But it was 1989, and it was 1989 in Hong Kong. Not only was homosexuality illegal in Hong Kong at the time. And the censors had to come round and see all the films before the live show happened. And they said, oh, no, you can't have that one. We can't show that one. It's illegal. You'll be banned from Hong Kong for life if you show this video. And the Pet Shop Boys said, well, we really don't like standing against our principles, but we understand that we're in a different place. Context is all, maybe we should agree to the censorship, even though they weren't happy about the idea of censorship. And on the night, they didn't really say anything to the projectionist, apart from the fact that, the Hong Kong censors are going to be here tonight. They're not good, they want us to censor all the It's a Sin footage. But they never went through a rehearsal of doing it. And so the poor projectionist only knew what he had to censor after it had already been projected. And so during It's a Sin, you saw all the footage, the boys kissing, the rubbing with oil and everything like that. And then you just get this great big hand over the screen, sort of darkening the screen after the rude bits had already been shown. But apparently the Hong Kong censors, rather than, banning the Pet Shop Boys for life from Hong Kong, they said, oh, well, you've made enough of an effort. I think we can live with that.
I hope the projectionist is okay. I'd quite like to hear him get in touch just to let us know that he's okay.
Whether he wasn't thrown into jail and he's still languishing there now. Yeah,
as the Pet Shop Boys move on.
Exactly, they let him carry the can.
That's good. And I'm afraid we have to, I would talk about this for another hour, but I'm afraid we will have to finish off. I've got one more very simple or perhaps rather difficult question, Lynsey, I feel I have to ask. What's your favourite Pet Shop Boys song?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, I wish I'd had like about 3 weeks to think about this first. I think off the top of my head, I would say Left to My Own Devices, which is a really, really epic song, about 7 minutes. It's their version of A Day in the Life, basically. It's got operatic trills, it's got a full orchestra, it's incredibly epic, but it's an absolute hymn to the everyday. I absolutely love it.
Well, I think we should all go and find that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Lynsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'll welcome any chance to talk about the Pet Shop Boys anytime.
We'll do it again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, then.